Picture this, okay. You are standing right in the middle of a medieval marketplace.
Oh, setting the scene. I like it.
Yeah, really visualize it. Your boots are just like deep in the mud. It smells intensely like wood smoke and livestock. And there are literally hundreds of people just screaming over each other, haggling for goods, total chaos.
Right. A really sensory-heavy environment. Just total sensory overload.
Exactly. And you, in this scenario, you are a farmer. You've been saving up your little copper coins for months and months, and you are here to make, well, basically the most important purchase of your entire year. You need to buy a fat, healthy piglet.
Because that piglet, that's food for the winter. It literally means survival for your family.
Yes, it's life or death, honestly. So you finally find a seller, you hand over your life savings, every last coin, and he hands you this heavy, squirming canvas sack.
The literal bag.
The bag. You walk away and you're clutching this thing to your chest, just thinking, like, my family is secure, we are going to be okay. But here's the twist. You haven't actually bought a pig. Yeah. The man who sold it to you, total con artist. When you weren't looking, he swapped out the valuable piglet for a worthless, vicious, completely feral street cat.
Wow. Just a terrible trade.
And he shoved it right into the bag. And the crazy thing is, as long as you keep that bag tied shut, the illusion totally holds. You are walking through this crowded market carrying a literal lie.
It is such a brilliant, but terrifyingly precarious moment. Because the entire reality of that situation, the whole transaction relies entirely on just a piece of twine keeping a canvas bag shut tight.
And what absolutely blows my mind is that, hundreds of years later, you and I are sitting here in the 21st century. We are surrounded by glass-walled boardrooms and highly encrypted servers, and we are still using that exact same medieval scheme to describe what happens when a massive corporate secret is accidentally exposed.
It's true. The language has completely survived the centuries.
It really has. And that's exactly what we're doing today. We are diving into a huge stack of sources today that really dissect the absolutely wild, deeply visceral language that we use to talk about hiding the truth. Because let's be honest with you, the listener out there, when you're growing up, you are sold this very beautiful, simplistic idea about honesty.
Oh, absolutely. The whole, always tell the truth, honesty is the best policy kind of thing.
Exactly. You are taught that total, absolute transparency is the ultimate virtue. Just tell the truth, right? But then, you enter the real world. You step into a corporate office, or you start actually paying attention to politics, and you realize pretty quickly that total blinding transparency is it's a myth. It doesn't actually exist.
Nor could it, really. If we take a step back and just look at the sheer mechanics of any complex human system, absolute transparency would lead to immediate and total paralysis.
Total gridlock.
Exactly. You could never negotiate a complex treaty, you could never develop a fragile new prototype, and you certainly could never manage a PR crisis if every single unfiltered thought, every rough draft, was broadcast simultaneously to the entire world.
Oh man, imagine the chaos if every terrible brainstorm idea was public record.
It would be a nightmare, which is why, we have to recognize that information is not merely a collection of neutral data points. Information is a deeply, deeply valuable currency.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because calling it a currency that completely changes how we look at, a random email or a hushed conversation in the hallway.
It reframes the entire concept of communication, yeah.
Right, because if information is money, well, you don't just leave your life savings spread out on your front lawn for the neighbors to browse through. You lock it up, you hoard it, you trade it strategically.
Exactly, you protect it.
And so the core mission of our deep dive today is to really decode this fascinating, highly sophisticated language that we use to describe exactly how that currency flows and, crucially, how it gets restricted.
And to truly decode it, I think we need to first establish the foundational thesis that really emerges from all these sources. It's a concept that applies to a massive multinational conglomerate just as perfectly as it applies to, your local neighborhood homeowners association.
With the HOA drama is always the best drama.
Oh, it's the absolute peak of secrecy and power dynamics. But the thesis is this: every organization on Earth operates on two parallel communication systems simultaneously.
Yeah.
We could just call them System A and System B.
Okay. I feel like I inherently know what those are, just from existing in the corporate world, but let's officially define them. System A has to be the official stuff, right? Like the polished, public-facing reality.
Precisely. System A is the sanitized, fully documented truth. These are your formal press releases, the CEO's quarterly address, the employee handbook, the legally vetted public statements.
That's stuff the lawyers have looked at.
Yes, it is the exact information the organization actively wants you to consume. It is highly structured, and let's be honest, it is usually utterly sterile.
Totally. I actually sometimes think of System A as the architecture of the building. It's the floor plan that everyone is allowed to see. It looks great on paper.
I like that analogy.
Thanks. But then you have System B, which feels a lot more like the plumbing. It's hidden behind the walls. It's really messy. It operates under high pressure. And if it bursts well, it completely ruins the beautiful architecture. System B is the unofficial network.
The real network, some might say.
Yeah, exactly. The rumors whispered by the coffee machine, the highly strategic leaks, the deals that are basically shaken on in the parking garage before the actual meeting even officially starts.
And the really critical insight here is that you cannot master System A without understanding how System B is constantly, relentlessly manipulating it.
Because they're completely intertwined.
Exactly. You have to know how secrets are actually born, how they're maintained by the people in power, and how they ultimately die. And to track that entire life cycle of a secret, our sources point us first to the physical environment.
Where it all begins.
Right, because before a secret can travel anywhere, it has to be contained. It literally requires an architecture of secrecy.
Which brings up something that has just always fascinated me about human language. When we try to talk about abstract concepts like trust or ignorance or confidentiality, we don't actually use abstract words.
No, we get very literal.
Very literal. We grab the heaviest, most physical objects we can possibly find. We use thick wood, we use heavy architecture, we use the literal absence of light to describe how we exclude other people. So let's look at the absolute granddaddy of all secretive idioms, making a decision behind closed doors.
It really is the ultimate architectural metaphor for exclusion. If we just analyze the physical properties of a door for a second, an open door is an invitation, right?
Come on in.
It allows light, sound, and air to pass freely between two distinct spaces. It fundamentally signifies accessibility. But when you shut a heavy, solid, completely opaque door, imagine like a thick mahogany door to a massive executive suite, you're engaging in a highly intentional, aggressive act of environmental control.
I wouldn't have naturally called it aggressive, but you're totally right. When you shut a door in someone's face, even if it's metaphorically, you are drawing a hard physical boundary line.
You are telling them they do not belong in this space.
Exactly. You are creating an immediate in-group and an out-group just by using a piece of wood. The people inside that room possess the currency, the information, and the people outside are essentially bankrupt.
Because that physical barrier entirely removes the friction of public opinion. Let's actually explore the illustrative example from the research because it makes this so clear. Consider a massive publicly traded corporation. In System A, they are running this huge nationwide advertising campaign declaring an unwavering, ironclad commitment to green energy and environmental sustainability.
Oh, I know these ads. They have the beautiful acoustic guitar music playing, lots of sweeping drone shots of trees and smiley employees.
Exactly. That is the shiny floor plan. That is exactly what they want everyone, the whole public, to look at and focus on.
But then, simultaneously, the executives of that exact same company are sitting behind closed doors, signing a deeply controversial, multi-decade supply contract with an oil conglomerate that has just a terrible environmental record.
And they require that door to be firmly closed because the paradox is just too fragile to survive out in the open air.
It would instantly shatter. I mean, if System A and System B actually collided in the public lobby of that building, the public relations fallout would be catastrophic. The closed door is literally the only thing allowing the company to occupy two completely contradictory realities at the exact same time. It shields the hypocrisy.
It really does. But let us shift our perspective for a moment. A door has two sides, right?
You're right.
While the executives inside are feeling very secure and powerful, how do we describe the psychological and physical reality of the people who are left out in the hallway? This brings us to another really vital piece of imagery from the sources. When you are on the wrong side of that door, you're often described as being kept in the dark.
Oh, this one gets me. It is just so visceral. Like, behind closed doors is all about the people in power. It's about the architects who are building the secret. But kept in the dark focuses purely on the victim of the secret.
It really centers the experience of being excluded.
It strips you of all your agency. Think about what it actually feels like to wake up in a pitch black room. You are stumbling around, your hands are outstretched, you are completely disoriented. You could be standing literally an inch away from a brick wall or like an open elevator shaft, and you would have absolutely no idea.
The sensory deprivation is the entire point. Across almost all human cultures, historically, light serves as the universal metaphor for knowledge, truth, and situational awareness.
To see is to know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
To illuminate a subject is to understand it. Therefore, to intentionally extinguish the lights on someone is to deliberately blind them to their own reality.
I always struggle a bit with the intent here, though. Like, is it always a deeply malicious act? Because sometimes leaders claim they are keeping people in the dark to protect them or to protect the project.
That's a really valid point. It's not always cartoon villain evil.
Right. Let's say a tech company's engineering team has been secretly building this massive, revolutionary software update for like a whole year. They're writing code at 2 a.m., eating takeout, but they intentionally keep their own marketing department completely in the dark until the literal day before the product launches.
That is a fascinating scenario because it highlights the actual calculation of risk that leaders do. The engineering leaders aren't necessarily being malicious, as you said. They are practicing what we might call paternalistic secrecy.
Paternalistic secrecy. I like that term.
They have essentially decided that the risk of the marketing team accidentally leaking the software into a competitor, basically, System B taking over, is vastly more dangerous to the company than the sheer chaos of giving the marketing team 0 days to actually prepare a campaign.
But look at the crazy power dynamic there. The engineers completely control the light switch. The marketing team essentially operating on a fake timeline, a fake reality for a whole year. And when the engineers finally decide to flip the lights on and say, surprise, launch it tomorrow, the marketing team is going to be furious and terrified.
Absolutely panicking.
You can't just blindfold someone, take the blindfold off a year later, and expect them to immediately run a full-speed sprint.
Which is exactly why the architectural metaphors are so profound here. You are manipulating the physical environment, or at least the metaphorical environment, to manipulate human behavior. And there's a third variation of this physical hiding that the sources discuss. Sometimes you don't put people in a dark room and you don't lock them out of a boardroom. Sometimes you hide the object itself. You keep it under wraps.
Oh, okay. So now we are shifting away from wood and light and we're moving to textiles. It's such a tactile phrase.
It is very tactile. Keeping something under wraps means maintaining strict, unyielding secrecy about a new development, a product, or a corporate strategy until it is officially ready to be presented to the world. It is all about protecting a nascent, fragile idea from premature exposure.
I love the visual of this because it feels so incredibly theatrical. Imagine a brilliant, kind of eccentric inventor working in a private garage. They have just engineered a revolutionary new sports car.
The next big thing.
Right. And the aerodynamics are so unique that if a rival company even saw the shadow of the chassis, they could steal the intellectual property and beat them to market. So what does the inventor do? Before the big press conference, they throw these heavy, opaque canvas tarps and thick moving blankets over the entire vehicle. They physically wrap it up.
They are completely smothering the visual information.
Yeah.
But what differentiates keeping something under wraps from our previous idioms is the inherent built-in promise of future revelation.
Well, that's interesting. Explain that.
Well, think about it. A closed door suggests a permanent institutional exclusion. You are out, we are in. Being kept in the dark implies this ongoing manipulation, but wrapping an object, it implies that the wrapping is fundamentally temporary. It exists specifically to build toward a grand reveal.
That makes perfect sense. I mean, you don't wrap a birthday present just to leave it in the back of your closet until the end of time.
Exactly. The wrapping actively builds the anticipation.
We see this all the time in the corporate world with massive mergers and acquisitions. Imagine a scenario where a colossal media conglomerate is secretly buying out its biggest rival. The lawyers are working 100-hour weeks. They are drafting thousands of pages of contracts. But until every single signature is completely dry, they have to keep the entire acquisition tightly under wraps.
Because the vulnerability of an unfinished deal is just extreme. If that information leaks prematurely, if the wraps come off too soon, stock prices would become incredibly volatile. Federal regulators might suddenly intervene with injunctions, or, a rival bidder could sweep in with a hostile offer.
The deal would just fall apart.
Entirely.
Yeah.
So the wrapping, the non-disclosure agreements, the encrypted hard drives, the secret code names for the project, all of that acts as a protective synthetic shell. It allows the fragile deal to mature safely in System B until it is robust enough to survive the brutal, unforgiving scrutiny of System A.
Okay, so we've officially established the fortress. We have the heavy oak doors shut tight, the lights are turned off on the rest of the staff, and the prototypes are completely smothered in canvas tarps. The architects of these secrets are sitting back in their leather chairs feeling incredibly secure.
They think they've won.
They do, but they are completely ignoring the most fundamental flaw in any system of secrecy: the human brain.
Yes, because human curiosity is essentially an unstoppable biological force.
It truly, truly is. When you place a physical barrier in front of a human being, you don't extinguish their interest, you supercharge it. The very act of putting a heavy locked door in a normal hallway broadcasts a massive signal that says, hey, whatever is behind here is incredibly valuable.
It's an advertisement for the secret.
Yes. When a massive decision is locked away, the people who have been excluded don't just shrug and walk away. They become entirely obsessed with finding a way inside.
This naturally transitions us to the biology of curiosity. Because obviously, individuals cannot physically break down the boardroom door with an axe at a long time. I mean, it would result in their immediate termination or probably their arrest.
Probably both, yeah.
Right. So they express this deep psychological desire to bypass the physical barriers entirely. And this desire manifests in a really bizarre, almost creepy idiom, wanting to be a fly on the wall.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, because I have to admit, I have always found this specific metaphor deeply, deeply strange. Think about the entire animal kingdom for a second. If we are crafting a cool fantasy about being a stealthy spy, why not choose a majestic panther, or a completely silent owl, or even a chameleon that blends in?
Those all sound much cooler, honestly.
Right. But no, the collective human consciousness got together and chose a common, annoying housefly. The phrase means you desperately desire to secretly and invisibly observe a highly confidential or dramatic conversation without anyone knowing you were there. But why on earth did we pick a fly?
Well, because the fly represents the ultimate perfected paradox of presence and insignificance.
Yeah.
If we connect this to the bigger picture of human psychology, we don't merely want to be invisible, ethereal ghosts.
Because a ghost isn't really there.
Exactly. A ghost doesn't occupy physical space. It doesn't breathe the air in the room. We desire a tangible, physical vantage point within that space. So, consider the nature of a tiny insect resting on the plaster of a boardroom wall. It is entirely, utterly ignored by the powerful executives sitting at the mahogany table.
It's beneath their notice.
Totally. They might lazily swat at it if it gets too close, but they do not alter their behavior because of it.
That is the crucial point right there. Nobody filters their speech or watches their tone or hides their emotions because a housefly is in the room. The fly is granted full access to the raw, unedited, viciously authentic truth that System B thrives upon.
And biologically speaking, the fly possesses a literal 360-degree view of the entire environment through its compound eyes. It absorbs the micro-expressions, the trembling hands under the table, the slit pieces of paper, the whispered threats. It takes an absolute totality while contributing absolutely nothing to the social dynamic. It is the flawless passive observer.
It's the ultimate fantasy. Total invisibility combined with total unrestricted access to the most elite spaces on Earth. Let's actually ground this in a really high-stakes scenario. Imagine the financial news has been absolutely dominated for, say, 6 months by a toxic, multi-billion-dollar lawsuit between two tech giants.
Oh, the media would be all over that.
All over it. The two CEOs publicly, visibly despise each other. The public relations battle System A has been incredibly sanitized, but obviously super hostile. Finally, a federal judge forces these two billionaires to meet in a bleak, neutral conference room in an airport hotel, just the two of them, to attempt a settlement.
Just the two of them in a room.
Yes. Every single journalist, every employee, and every massive institutional investor knows with absolute certainty that the conversation happening in that hotel room will bear zero resemblance to the press release that follows it.
Right, because the official System statement is just going to say something bland like, we engaged in a productive, forward-looking dialogue.
Exactly. But what is actually happening in the room? There could be screaming, there could be literal extortion, someone might throw a water glass against the wall. The sheer, raw human drama of two massive egos colliding without their PR teams there to protect them is just intoxicating.
People would pay millions for that access.
People would surrender a year's salary just to sit silently in the corner of that room and witness how power actually functions when the cameras are turned off. They are desperate to be a fly on the wall, to see the unvarnished reality of the world.
But of course, reality is unforgiving. We cannot miraculously metamorphose into insects as much as we might want to. The heavy door remains securely locked and the walls remain impenetrable. However, human nature, when confronted by an impassable physical barrier, behaves exactly like water.
Ooh, I like that. It finds the cracks.
It always inevitably finds the microscopic cracks. It naturally seeks the path of least resistance. Because we are denied direct observation, because we can't be flies, we begin to speculate, we begin to whisper, we synthesize tiny, seemingly completely unrelated fragments of data.
Like what?
Like a sudden, unexplained calendar change for the CEO, or a tense, uncharacteristic silence between two managers who usually joke around, or maybe a late-night catering delivery to the legal department on a Friday.
Oh, the late-night pizza delivery to the lawyers is always a dead giveaway. The secret starts to sweat. It starts to literally seep under the doorframe.
Exactly. And this introduces us to the technology of rumors. We must examine the vast, chaotic, informal network that inevitably compromises the structural integrity of every secret ever kept. We are looking at the process of hearing it through the grapevine.
I heard it through the grapevine. I guarantee you, the exact second I said that, almost every single listener immediately started hearing that iconic, smooth Marvin Gaye bass line in their head.
Oh, absolutely. It's impossible not to.
It is forever linked to 1960s Motown soul. But the actual phrase, which means hearing unofficial news or gossip passing from person to person before a formal public announcement, has an origin story that is vastly older, vastly grittier, and way more chaotic than a pop song.
Yes. What's fascinating here is the sheer, heavy historical reality behind this idiom. To truly comprehend why we refer to modern corporate gossip as a grapevine, we have to actually travel back to the mid-19th century. We have to place ourselves in the brutal, chaotic landscape of the American Civil War.
Okay, setting the stage again.
Right, and this is during the absolute infancy of a revolutionary new communications technology, the telegraph.
I love this historical pivot. So let me paint the picture for the listener. It's the 1860s. The telegraph has just been invented, and it is basically viewed as magic. For the very first time in human history, information can travel across a continent faster than a man riding a horse.
Which is a massive paradigm shift. It fundamentally alters how humanity perceives time and space.
But now, the country is tearing itself apart in this massive, bloody civil war. The military urgently needs to coordinate massive troop movements across vast, completely untamed wilderness.
And in the chaotic theater of war, they did not have the luxury of time nor the industrial infrastructure to plant perfectly straight, organized, deeply rooted telegraph poles all along the battlefronts. They needed communication networks established literally overnight.
So what did they do?
Well, the military telegraph operators would unspool these incredibly heavy copper wires and just string them chaotically from whatever natural structures were available. They looped them around the branches of oak trees, they draped them across ravines, and they pulled them through dense, overgrown forests.
Now, visualize what that actually looks like. You have miles and miles of dark, twisting, drooping wires completely tangled through the branches of trees. To any tired soldier marching past, it didn't look like a sophisticated, cutting-edge technological network. It looked exactly like the wild, twisting, sprawling vines of a grape plant.
And so the soldiers started sarcastically calling this crude ad hoc system the grapevine telegraph.
But the visual resemblance is really merely the surface of the metaphor. The critical, enduring element of the grapevine is the inherent quality of the information that it carried.
Exactly. Because this early network was constructed in an absolute panic, because it was incredibly disorganized, and because it was frequently intercepted or physically tapped or literally damaged by artillery fire.
Or just squirrels chewing on it.
Right. The messages that actually survived the journey across the grapevine were notoriously, dangerously unreliable.
The distortion was just massive. A commander miles away might send a frantic message that says, retreat immediately, but by the time those electrical pulses bounce through the tangled wires, the bad connections, and the panicked operators, the message might arrive at the front lines reading, attack at dawn.
It was a lethal game of telephone. Furthermore, spies would literally tap into the physical vines and inject deliberate strategic misinformation to completely confuse the enemy. So during the Civil War, if a soldier told you they heard something on the grapevine, it meant they had received a piece of intelligence, but you had to treat it with extreme life-or-death skepticism.
Because the very method of delivery was fundamentally flawed.
Precisely. And that precise historical dynamic maps absolutely perfectly onto our modern digital corporate environments. The modern office grapevine is System B operating at maximum capacity. It is the unofficial, horizontal, and highly volatile communication network of an organization.
While System A is vertical.
Exactly. System A travels cleanly from the CEO down to the vice president, down to the manager, down to the employee. It has a strict chain of command. The grapevine is diagonal. It moves completely sideways.
It jumps from a stressed-out accountant to a human resources representative during a quick coffee break, gets texted to a sales manager in a completely different time zone, and then is whispered to an unpaid intern in the elevator.
It respects no hierarchy.
I just can't get over how perfect that connection is. The fact that a 19th century battlefield technology perfectly explains modern office gossip proves this universal, unbreakable rule of information. The method of delivery almost always dictates the quality of the intelligence.
100%.
Think about your own week at work, right? It's a random Tuesday afternoon, System A is completely silent, your inbox is quiet, no big company announcements. But you bump into a colleague in the break room, they quickly glance over their shoulder to make sure the door is closed, and they whisper, "Hey, I heard through the grapevine that the regional director is going to be forced to resign on Friday."
Okay, stop right there. In that exact moment, you are holding a highly volatile currency. You must instantly evaluate its actual worth. Where did the genesis of this rumor occur? Did the colleague personally witness the regional director carrying a cardboard box full of desk plants out of their office?
Or did an assistant's friend notice a strangely vague 15-minute calendar invite with the legal department?
Right. The information has traveled through the tangled, invisible vines of human observation, bias, and anxiety. It could be a perfectly accurate piece of corporate espionage. Or it could be a wild, hysterical distortion. Perhaps the director is simply moving to a nicer office down the hall, and the calendar invite was just to review a standard contract.
But the sheer power of the grapevine guarantees one thing. By the time System A finally releases the polished official announcement on Friday morning, System B has already entirely digested, analyzed, and priced that information into the social dynamic of the office.
System B is always faster.
Always. The grapevine is chaotic, it is messy, but my goodness, it is incredibly efficient at moving data. But this is exactly where the architecture of secrecy begins to physically crumble. Because once a secret escapes the sterile vacuum of the closed boardroom and hits the chaotic, vibrating wires of the grapevine, its structural integrity is fatally compromised.
It can't survive out there forever.
It can't. The secret is now in motion. And basic physics tells us that when a fragile object is moving rapidly through a really complex system, it is only a matter of time before someone fumbles it. Someone is going to make a critical, careless error, and the hidden truth is going to violently spill out into the open space.
And so, we have now arrived at the mechanics of exposure. We have meticulously tracked the life cycle of a secret from its deliberate creation in a restricted space to the intense human desire to observe it, to its subtle, distorted leakage through the informal rumor network.
It's been quite a journey.
But eventually, every secret reaches a critical threshold. It crosses the boundary from being hidden or merely speculated about to being undeniably factually known by the public. And more often than not, this profound transition is not some graceful, beautifully planned event. It is sudden, it is accidental, and it is entirely irreversible.
And the idiom that perfectly captures the physics of this exact moment is letting the cat out of the bag.
Oh, this is a great one.
Letting the cat out of the bag. It's a phrase we throw around constantly. It means accidentally, carelessly, or prematurely revealing a secret, which instantly ruins a carefully planned surprise or completely exposes a hidden agenda. You mentioned right at the start of this deep dive that the historical origins of these phrases are fascinating, and I truly believe this one might be the most vivid, cinematic origin story of them all.
It really paints a picture.
It does. We have to take the listener right back to that mud and noise of the medieval agricultural market I mentioned in the intro.
Let's do it. It serves as a masterclass in how the gritty realities of historical daily life leave a permanent, indelible imprint on our modern psychology and our vocabulary. So, return to that bustling marketplace. The stakes for the poor farmer are incredibly high. A plump, healthy piglet was not some luxury item. It was a critical asset.
An investment.
Yes, it represented sustained food for the harsh winter months, and it represented tangible financial wealth.
So, the farmer finds a seller. But as we established, the seller is not a farmer, he is a predator. a con man operating in the chaos of the crowd. The transaction happens quickly. The seller takes what the farmer believes is a fat, valuable piglet and violently shoves it into a heavy, opaque canvas sack, tying the top tightly shut with a thick knot before handing it over in exchange for the hard-earned coins.
But an extraordinary sleight of hand was involved. The dishonest seller never put a pig in that bag. He secretly swapped the animals and shoved a worthless, aggressive, starving, stray street cat into the canvas sack instead.
The farmer walks away into the crowd, completely blissfully ignorant. He's carrying this squirming, heavy bag against his chest, deeply believing he has secured his family's survival for the year. The deception, the massive secret, is entirely secure, but only as long as that canvas bag remains totally sealed.
It's a ticking time bomb.
It is, and the visual climax here is where the idiom derives all of its staying power. I want you to imagine the exact fraction of a second when the exposure happens. The farmer is walking down the cobblestone street. Maybe he just wants to quickly peek at his new prize to admire it. Or maybe the squirming animal inside causes the knot to slip.
He just loosens it a tiny bit.
Just a little. The farmer unties the twine, he opens the neck of the sack, just a few inches, and instantly, without any warning, a furious, terrified, razor-clawed street cat explodes out of the darkness.
Oh, man.
It leaps into the air, hissing and scratching wildly at absolutely everything in sight.
And in that moment, the elaborate scam is instantly, spectacularly, and violently visible to hundreds of people in the marketplace. The comfortable illusion of the pig is shattered into 1,000 pieces, never to be reassembled.
And this is the most crucial part of the entire metaphor. This is the absolute, irreversible physics of informational exposure. Once an angry, feral cat is out of a sack, you can never, ever put it back in.
Good luck trying.
Right. You cannot chase that furious animal through the mud, wrestle it back into the canvas bag, tie it shut, and calmly pretend to the crowd that you still have a pig. The truth is out. It is running chaotic circles around you, and it is entirely out of your control.
It is a beautiful, if chaotic, representation of the concept of informational entropy. Maintaining a massive secret requires a constant, immense expenditure of energy, much like trying to physically restrain a wild, struggling animal inside a sack.
You're burning calories just holding it close.
Exactly. But exposure requires zero energy. Exposure happens in a microsecond of dropped focus. Gravity and chaos do the rest of the work.
Let's bring this visceral imagery back into a modern, relatable context. Because it doesn't always have to be a malicious, ruinous corporate scam. It can be a purely joyful secret that gets destroyed by sheer clumsiness.
We've all been there.
Oh, definitely. Let's say an entire marketing department has spent 3 grueling months planning a massive, highly coordinated, incredibly expensive surprise retirement party for a beloved senior executive. Let's just call her Sarah. They have a luxury venue booked, custom caterers arranged, and hundreds of former colleagues secretly flying into town.
A huge logistical operation.
Massive. The secret is tightly, perfectly secured in the bag.
Until one person, for just 1 second, loses their situational awareness.
Exactly. Sarah's well-meaning but incredibly absent-minded husband is sitting across from her at the breakfast table on a random Tuesday. He's distracted, reading his phone, and without thinking, he casually looks up and asks, "Hey, for the big retirement blowout next week, could you want me to pick up your dress from the dry cleaners?"
Boom. The cat is out of the bag. The cat is currently running laps around the kitchen table, knocking over the coffee cups.
The surprise, the hundreds of hours of planning, the elaborate deception, it is instantly, permanently vaporized. And just like the medieval farmer in the mud, the husband realizes his catastrophic mistake a split second too late.
It's the worst feeling in the world.
It is. He watches the words leave his mouth, but he cannot reach out and physically grab the sound waves back out of the air. He cannot backtrack and say, "What party? I didn't say party, I meant a parting gift."
No one is buying that.
No one. The currency of knowledge has irrevocably transferred from his brain to hers, and the architecture of the secrecy is permanently leveled.
It is devastating.
Yeah.
But, letting the cat out of the bag is fundamentally anchored in the concept of accidents. It is born of carelessness and clumsiness. It is a chaotic, uncontrolled exposure. However, if we look closely at the highest echelons of power, the mechanics of exposure are not always accidental.
Sometimes they are very much on purpose.
Exactly. Sometimes the sudden release of a closely guarded secret is a highly calculated, ruthlessly negotiated transaction. People who wield immense power understand that System B, the chaotic rumor network, can be meticulously manipulated to serve their own strategic ends. They desperately want to expose a specific truth to the world, but they absolutely refuse to bear the personal or professional cost of being the one who exposed it.
I love this transition. They want the cat running around the marketplace, causing a huge scene, but they don't want anyone to see them holding the empty bag.
Precisely. It is the tactical weaponization of secrecy. And they achieve this delicate balance through a strict professional and often legally adjacent agreement known as speaking off the record.
Off the record. This is the classic trope. We hear this phrase constantly in tense political thrillers and journalism movies. Two people meet in a dimly lit, echoing parking garage at midnight, and the shadowy informant looks around and says, "What I'm about to tell you has to be strictly off the record."
Right. Deep-throat style.
Exactly. But what does that actually mean in practice outside of Hollywood? It is a rigid ethical agreement most commonly utilized in investigative journalism, high-stakes law, or elite corporate public relations to share incredibly secret, highly sensitive information with a listener for the sake of context, while absolutely, unequivocally forbidding that listener from publishing the speaker's name or directly quoting their exact words.
To truly understand the power dynamic here, we have to contrast it with the cat out of the bag. The cat is pure, unadulterated chaos. Speaking off the record is the masterful illusion of complete control. To grasp the mechanics, we first must rigorously define what the record actually is.
Okay, what is the record?
The record is the official, permanent history of an event. It is the published newspaper article, the sworn court transcript, the formal, legally binding press release. The record is the absolute embodiment of System A.
It is the giant marble monument that the organization builds for the public to stare at.
Exactly. Therefore, by explicitly demanding that a conversation exists off that record, the speaker is actively manipulating the flow of information to ensure their own survival. They are injecting a vital, dangerous truth into the ecosystem. They're expertly guiding the narrative. They are providing the journalist with a highly detailed map of exactly where to dig for the bodies.
But they are simultaneously throwing up a blast shield.
Yes. They are completely surgically shielding themselves from the accountability and the retaliation of being identified as the source of the leak.
It is a brilliantly effective, if sometimes incredibly cynical, survival strategy, and the sources provide a fantastic high-tension example of this exact dynamic. Imagine a horrific, high-profile crime has been committed in a major city. The public is terrified, the media is in an absolute frenzy, and the pressure on the police department is just boiling over.
Total pressure cooker.
Right. So the police chief stands at a podium in a brightly lit press briefing room in front of 50 flashing cameras. This is System A operating at maximum capacity. The chief looks into the cameras and officially states, "We have no viable suspects at this time. The investigation remains entirely ongoing." That statement is chiseled into the official record.
But the reality is far more complex. Later that same evening, long after the cameras have left, the police chief calls a trusted, veteran investigative journalist into his private office, ensures the heavy door is firmly closed, and says, "Look, strictly off the record, we know exactly who committed the crime. It is the mayor's eldest son.
Whoa.
But we do not have the hard, undeniable forensic evidence required to arrest him yet. If you print my name saying this, the mayor will immediately fire me, appoint a crony, and bury the case forever."
Now, let's look at what the police chief is actually doing here. He isn't just venting his frustrations to a friend. He is actively using the dark, hidden channels of System B to manage the crushing pressure of System A. He's giving the journalist the most explosive secret in the city, so the journalist stops wasting time digging in the wrong direction and instead points the massive resource of the newspaper directly at the mayor's son.
It's a calculated redirect.
Exactly. The chief is intentionally releasing the toxic secret, but he is maintaining his own career and the integrity of his investigation. It is not an accident. It is a highly negotiated strategic release of truth.
But this complex dance of negotiated truths raises an incredibly profound question, perhaps the most critical, morally challenging question of this entire deep dive. We have discussed accidents and we have discussed strategic, self-serving leaks. But what happens when a secret is so inherently toxic, so deeply unethical, or so flagrantly illegal that an individual inside the locked room decides that negotiated truths and whispered, off-the-record hints are simply no longer morally sufficient?
When playing the game isn't enough anymore.
Right. What happens when a human being looks at the architecture of secrecy and decides that the public's absolute right to know supersedes their own career, their own safety, and their own self-preservation?
That is the moment the entire system violently breaks down. We move completely away from the cynical tactics of self-preservation, and we move into the realm of absolute, blinding, scorched earth public accountability. We move to the nuclear option.
We arrive at the ultimate ethics of disclosure. We arrive at the agonizing decision to blow the whistle.
To blow the whistle. This is the absolute apex of our journey today. This idiom describes the act of intentionally, deliberately, and very publicly exposing illegal, corrupt, or highly unethical behavior that is being hidden within the walls of your own organization. It is not a subtle leak. It is the intentional, catastrophic destruction of a secret.
And if we connect this concept to the broader themes we've explored, the metaphor here is incredibly potent because it relies entirely on the aggressive physics of sound. We have moved from the quiet, heavy wood of closed doors, past the hushed, distorted whispers of the grapevine, to the deafening, unavoidable, piercing shriek of a mechanical whistle.
It's a total sensory shift.
Consider the literal origins of the tool in law enforcement or competitive sports.
I picture a wildly chaotic, busy intersection in a major city. Traffic is totally gridlocked. Hundreds of pedestrians are yelling. Taxis are honking. There is a massive, overwhelming hum of normal, everyday noise. Suddenly, a police officer standing on the corner witnesses a violent, life-threatening crime taking place in an alleyway. What do?
They don't just whisper for help.
No. They don't politely tap the nearest person on the shoulder and ask for assistance. They don't send an email. They put a specialized metal whistle to their lips, fill their lungs, and they blow with absolutely every ounce of force they have. That shrill, high-frequency, piercing sound is engineered to cut violently through every other frequency of noise. It instantly, physiologically forces the action to stop. Every single head on that street violently turns toward the source of the sound.
Or consider the environment of a referee on a massive roaring soccer pitch. 22 elite athletes are in constant motion. Tens of thousands of fans are screaming at the top of their lungs. The system of the game, System A, is functioning normally, albeit loudly. But the referee, with their trained eye, spots a vicious, potentially career-ending foul, a severe, intentional violation of the core rules that threatens the very integrity of the sport itself.
The whistle blows.
The whistle blows. The entire machinery of the game halts immediately. The whistle is not a human voice politely asking for attention. It is a mechanical, undeniable scream demanding that absolutely everyone stop what they are doing and look at the infraction.
In the corporate, medical, or political world, blowing the whistle serves that exact identical function. It is a non-negotiable demand for total, blinding transparency. It is the exact polar opposite of making a deal behind closed doors. If a closed door is an architectural tool designed to keep the public out, blowing the whistle is strapping dynamite to the door, kicking it off its hinges, dragging the ugly secret out by its collar, and throwing it into the middle of the town square at high noon.
And the specific human being who chooses to take this immense action, the whistleblower, occupies a fascinating, incredibly precarious, and often deeply painful position in modern society. The very act of blowing the whistle forces a massive, irreconcilable societal split in how that person is perceived.
I really want to push on this duality because it is incredibly heavy, and it is something we see play out in the news cycle constantly. To the general public, the people standing outside the locked doors, the whistleblower is almost immediately framed as a profound mythic hero. They are the brave, solitary individual who stood up to the unstoppable corporate Goliath. They sacrificed their own comfort, their own paycheck, to expose a hidden truth that protected the innocent.
But to the company, to the executives who built the doors and turned off the lights, the whistleblower is the ultimate unforgivable traitor. They broke the sacred unspoken covenant of System B. They destroyed the fortress from the inside.
They are public enemy number one.
The source material provides a chillingly clear, high-space example that perfectly encapsulates this agonizing dynamic. Imagine an incredibly brilliant lead scientist working at a massive, highly profitable, globally recognized chemical manufacturing plant. This scientist is highly compensated, they hold a prestigious title, they have stock options, and they are firmly entrenched within the inner circle.
They have everything to lose.
Everything.
But one evening, while quietly reviewing a set of obscure environmental data, they discover a horrific, undeniable secret. The factory is not disposing of its hazardous waste through legal, expensive channels. Instead, to save millions of dollars in compliance fees, the executives are secretly, intentionally pumping millions of gallons of highly toxic, carcinogenic chemicals directly into the local river system, slowly poisoning the drinking water of an entire town downstream.
Wow. And the executives absolutely know they are doing it. They have deliberately kept the operation strictly under wraps. And suddenly, this solitary scientist is faced with an unimaginably agonizing moral choice. They could choose to simply stay quiet, keep their lucrative job, protect their family's financial future, and pretend to remain in the dark with everyone else.
Which is what a lot of people would do.
Honestly, yes. Or they could attempt to subtly leak the data to a local reporter off the record, desperately hoping someone else will do the dangerous, dirty work of exposing the company. But for this individual, the sheer, crushing moral weight of the poisoned water is simply too heavy to bear. The scientist makes the conscious decision to blow the whistle. They secretly gather the internal memos, they copy the data drives, they bypass the heavy closed doors of the executive suite, and they directly contact the Federal Environmental Protection Agency and the National Broadcast News. And crucially, they put their real name, their face, and their reputation on the accusation.
In that single blinding moment of exposure, the scientist knowingly detonates their own career trajectory within that industry. They invite immense, crushing legal retaliation from an army of corporate lawyers. The company will spend millions trying to completely ruin their personal and professional reputation.
It's professional suicide.
But they blow the whistle anyway because the deafening silence of the secret had become infinitely more toxic than the impending retaliation. The machinery of the chemical plant stops. The public, horrified, turns and looks. The secret dies in the sunlight.
It is a profound, incredibly courageous act of informational destruction. Blowing the whistle violently resets the entire complex system back to zero, forcing the pristine facade of System A to publicly acknowledge the horrifying, undeniable reality that System B had been desperately hiding.
Wow. When you lay it all out like that, we have truly, comprehensively journeyed through the entire fascinating life cycle of a secret today. The progression from absolute silence to deafening noise is staggering. We started our journey in the quiet, isolated, highly engineered privacy of decisions being made securely behind closed doors.
We felt the deliberate, disorienting blinding of being intentionally kept in the dark.
And we examined the careful, protective, theatrical preservation of keeping fragile prototypes under wraps.
We then explored the deep biological urge to completely bypass those physical barriers, unpacking the universal, paradoxically insectoid desire to be a fly on the wall.
We watched as the contained secret inevitably slowly leaked out, traveling along the chaotic, historically distorted wires of the corporate grapevine.
We witnessed the irreversible clumsiness and the chaotic entropy of a scam being suddenly exposed when someone accidentally lets the cat out of the bag.
We deeply examined the cynical, highly negotiated survival tactics of sharing dangerous information strictly off the record. And finally, we ended our journey with the deafening, undeniable, heroic, and utterly destructive mechanical sound of the whistleblower.
The ultimate takeaway from our deep dive today is that mastering this intricate vocabulary is not merely an academic exercise in linguistics, nor is it simply about learning how to sound like a savvy corporate insider in a boardroom meeting.
It's way bigger than that.
It is. It is about fundamentally, deeply understanding the underlying human drama that powers the daily news cycle, international politics, and your own personal daily life. You, our listener, are constantly navigating the extreme tension between these two parallel systems of communication, the polished official truth and the chaotic unofficial reality every single day of your life. Recognizing the mechanics behind these idioms is recognizing the very mechanics of human power itself.
So what does this all mean for you? As we bring this deep dive to a close, I want to directly challenge you to reflect on your own personal experiences with these complex secret-keeping mechanics. Because you are absolutely not just a passive, innocent observer in these systems. You actively participate in them, whether you realize it or not.
The source material leaves us with some truly excellent prompts for introspection, and I believe we should expand upon them for our audience to consider.
I completely agree. So I want you, the listener, to think deeply about your own life, your own history, and the environments you navigate. First, indulge the innate human curiosity we discussed. If you could possess absolute, undetectable invisibility, which room in all of human history would you most want to be a fly on the wall in?
Good question.
Would it be a tense underground war room during a terrifying global crisis? Would it be a recording studio with your absolute favorite band the night before they violently broke up? Or maybe, somewhat closer to home, would it just be the HR manager's office during your last promotional cycle? Think deeply about what unvarnished, raw truth you personally crave the most.
And conversely, I urge you to reflect on your own moments of informational entropy. Think back to a specific time in your life when you accidentally, carelessly, let the cat out of the bag.
Yeah.
A visceral moment where you completely ruined a surprise or prematurely leaked a sensitive truth.
Oh, those moments haunt you.
When that metaphorical cat hit the floor and started scrambling around, did you feel that sudden, sinking, cold realization in your stomach of how utterly impossible it was to reverse the flow of information? Did you truly feel the crushing permanence of exposure?
That terrifying feeling is the raw physics of secrecy breaking down in real time. I want to leave you with a final, somewhat provocative thought to mull over as you go about the rest of your week. The very next time you're standing by the office coffee machine or you are casually scrolling through your text messages and you hear a really juicy, scandalous piece of gossip about your workplace, before you automatically pass it on, I want you to stop.
Just pause for 1 second.
Take a breath and ask yourself a critical question. Examine the invisible power dynamics at play. Are you just acting as a passive, vibrating leaf on the tangled vines of the grapevine? Or are you actually being intentionally, strategically manipulated by someone pulling the invisible strings from securely behind closed doors?
It is a vital, protective question for navigating the complexities of the real world.
It really, truly is. Thank you so much for joining us on this incredibly revealing deep dive into the architecture, the biology, and the ultimate exposure of human secrets. Until next time, keep your eyes wide open, try your best to stay out of the dark, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.
When a high-level executive gets caught, quietly moving digital funds into an offshore account, why do we immediately start talking about buried bodies and dirty money?
Right, yeah.
Because, nobody was physically harmed. There are literally no actual bodies anywhere, and the money is completely invisible. It's just, numbers on a screen.
Completely abstract.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yet human nature just seems utterly incapable of processing the dark side of power without projecting it onto this really cinematic, almost visceral landscape.
We need the visuals.
We do. So today, we are cracking open the bizarre code of the English language. We're looking at a fascinating breakdown of how we describe secrecy, corruption, and the entire life cycle of a scandal.
It's quite a journey.
It really is. And our source for today's deep dive is a set of notes from a comprehensive study called The Anatomy of a Scandal. It details this highly dramatic vocabulary that society uses to navigate corporate politics, high society, and government misdeeds. It basically maps out a literal linguistic toolkit that shapes how we perceive truth and lies.
And the main premise of this study, which I think is just a fantastic hook, is that language is never neutral.
Right.
It's not just a matter of saying, this person committed a transgression. That clinical phrasing completely fails to capture the psychological weight of a betrayal of trust.
It's too dry.
Way too dry. So instead, our brains rely on spatial metaphors, biological disgust, and imagery of physical contamination just psychological sequence of a scandal. From the very initial act of concealment all the way to the inevitable institutional cover-up.
Let's start right at the beginning of that sequence then. Because, before a scandal can explode into the public square, it first has to be hidden.
Naturally.
And the notes point out something I hadn't really considered before. The language we use to describe hiding is overwhelmingly spatial. It's all about architecture.
Oh, absolutely.
We don't just keep a secret, right? We build physical boundaries to separate the polite, acceptable world from the illicit, hidden world.
And that structural separation is critical. Cognitive linguistics actually shows that human beings map morality onto physical space.
Wait, really? How so?
Well, we associate up and visible with honesty, and then down and enclosed are associated with deceit.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we construct this imaginary architecture to house our misdeeds because our brains just struggle to process abstract immorality.
We need a box to put it in.
Exactly. We need a physical container for it. So we draw a line and decide that, One side is our acceptable, curated reality, and the other side is the quarantine zone for our worst actions.
Which leads us directly to the first major concept in this study. Okay, let's unpack this. The phrase, a skeleton in the closet.
A classic.
Right, we all know it means having a ruinous secret from your past, but if you look at the mechanism of the phrase itself, it is pure Gothic horror.
It really is, yeah.
You are basically inviting society into this pristine, beautifully decorated house, which represents your public reputation. But locked in an intimate, dark space, your bedroom closet is the literal, physical remnant of a past crime.
And the choice of a skeleton is incredibly specific there. It's not just a generic monster or a ghost.
Right.
It is the decayed, durable framework of something that used to be alive. An action you took in the past is dead, but the evidence, the bones, they remain.
So true.
For a prominent politician, say, who has spent decades cultivating this flawless image, a past ethical breach isn't just a memory, it's a physical artifact that is constantly threatening to be discovered.
The pressure of that must be insane.
Oh, the psychological toll is massive. It comes from the energy required to keep that specific door shut while still smiling and hosting the party in the rest of the house.
But the people holding onto those keys, they still have to operate in the world, right? I mean, they still want to wield power, make deals, get things done.
Of course.
And because they can't afford the scrutiny of the well-lit rooms in their metaphorical house, their operational mechanisms are forced downward. They have started doing things under the table.
Notice how the spatial boundary shifts here, though. We go from a vertical door, like the closet, to a horizontal plane.
Oh, yeah.
We're moving from a static personal secret to dynamic, active corruption. The table basically acts as the dividing line between legitimate society and illicit operation.
It feels straight out of a mob movie, honestly.
Yeah.
Or a spy thriller.
Totally.
You have two executives at a high-end restaurant. And above the table, they're shaking hands, smiling for the cameras, signing a perfectly legal contract.
Right.
But under the table, hidden in the shadows by their feet, the actual transaction is happening.
Right.
Like a briefcase of untraceable cash is being swapped to bypass environmental regulations or something. The language creates a literal split screen.
And that duality is the entire point. Conducting a transaction under the table means operating without an official record or taxation. But it fundamentally requires that above-the-table interaction to exist as an alibi.
The public performance provides the cover.
Exactly. While the shadows provide the space for the actual exchange of power, the study emphasizes that corruption rarely exists in total darkness. It exists in the immediate shadow of legitimate systems.
You know, I have to throw an analogy in here because looking at these two phrases, the closet and the table, they act entirely like physical stage props.
Oh, well, that's a good way to look at it.
Right. The public performance, the polite societal acting, all of that happens on the front side of the prop. And the illegal reality happens on the exact opposite side. Doesn't this kind of suggest that society inherently knows that our polite official channels are often just a facade?
I think so, yeah.
It's like we've collectively built a language that just accepts the world operates on this split-level reality. The stage is for the public, and the backstage is for the truth.
That is a highly precise way to frame it. The vocabulary we've normalized proves our collective cynicism, in a way.
Yeah.
We accept the illusion of the stage, but our idioms betray the fact that we know the backstage is where the actual mechanics of power function. But here is the vulnerability of those spatial boundaries.
What the?
They are governed by physics, even metaphorically. Closets run out of space.
Right.
Doors get opened by accident. Tables get bumped and flipped over.
So the quarantine zone eventually fails.
Inevitably. And the moment that physical boundary breaches, the source material notes a massive shift in the linguistic framework.
We stop talking about architecture.
Exactly. We completely stop talking about architecture, shadows, and boundaries. The language suddenly pivots to visceral, biological messes and public contamination.
The eruption of gossip.
Yeah.
The secret gets out, and the immediate reaction from the public is to start dishing the dirt. And I love this one because this phrase is such a strange, almost absurd mixture of excavation and culinary vocabulary.
It really is a weird mix when you think about it.
Right. Like dirt is the slang for scandalous evidence. But dishing it means serving it on a silver platter to a hungry audience. Exactly like a chef at a high-end restaurant.
Well, consider the mechanism of why we use the word dirt in the first place. The study connects this to evolutionary psychology and the neurology of disgust.
disgust.
Yeah. Human beings process social and moral transgressions using the exact same neural pathways that process physical pathogens and rotting food.
Wow, that's wild.
So when managers gossip about a CEO's impending divorce the second he leaves the boardroom, they aren't just exchanging data. They are serving up social contagion.
Wait, I want to challenge this idea of it just being contagion for a second.
Sure.
Because we don't usually eat dirt, right? But the phrase dishing it implies people are actively hungry for it. Why does the language frame scandalous, unsanitary information as this highly sought-after meal?
Because gossip is the ultimate social currency. The study argues that consuming the dirt bonds the group. By ingesting the scandalous information together, the group establishes an in-group consensus about who is outside the moral boundaries. You're eating the dirt, knowing it's unsanitary, because the shared consumption of that forbidden meal signals that you are part of the inner circle.
It's like a transaction of trust.
Exactly, wrapped in a layer of social pollution.
That makes the transition to our next phrase even more striking then. Because the gossip escalates from the whispers of the boardroom to a full neighborhood spectacle with the phrase, airing dirty laundry in public.
The domestication of scandal.
Yes. We are taking the most complex corporate, legal, or political fallouts and mapping them onto basic household chores just to understand them.
What's fascinating here is that it is the ultimate breach of the private and public barrier. The social contract dictates a strict boundary regulation for personal dysfunction.
We all have dirty laundry.
Right. We all possess dirty, stained laundry representing our interpersonal conflicts, our failures, our internal dysfunctions. But the mandate is to wash them internally, within the private sphere.
So to air your dirty laundry in public is to take your most ruined, embarrassing items and literally string them up on a clothesline in your front yard for the entire neighborhood to stare at.
Precisely.
It's like two corporate co-founders screaming at each other on a public social media thread, tagging their investors, revealing all their internal toxicity, instead of just hashing it out in private mediation.
The mechanism here is all about inappropriate exposure. It's not just that the laundry is dirty, it's the non-consensual display of that dirt to an audience that has absolutely no business seeing it.
The innocent bystanders.
Right. The language fundamentally views scandalous revelations as deeply unsanitary for the community. We're drawn to stare at the clothesline, sure, but the language suggests we recognize it is actively contaminating the public square.
Let me push back on that framework for a second, though.
Okay, go for it.
Is airing dirty laundry always viewed by society as social pollution? Because, well, think about a whistleblower. If a whistleblower goes public with evidence that a company is dumping chemicals into a river, they are technically taking internal dysfunction and airing it in public.
True.
But we view whistleblowers as heroes, not polluters.
And that is a crucial distinction raised in the study's analysis. The phrase airing dirty laundry specifically implies that the mess is fundamentally personal or internal to the group and shouldn't concern the public.
I get it.
So a whistleblower exposing a public hazard isn't airing dirty laundry, they are sounding an alarm. But when a celebrity couple hashes out their messy custody battle on a podcast, that is dirty laundry.
Because it doesn't help anyone.
Exactly. The idiom is reserved for when the exposure serves no greater civic purpose other than mutual destruction and just public spectacle.
That distinction makes perfect sense. The public isn't being protected, they're just being contaminated by the mess. But, this assumes the person whose laundry is flapping in the wind or whose dirt is being consumed just sits there and takes it.
And they rarely do.
Right. The accused almost always goes on the offensive, which pushes our vocabulary into a completely new territory. We move away from the domestic sphere, and the language just escalates into active warfare.
The escalation is unavoidable. Once the architecture of concealment has failed and the social pollution has spread everywhere, the only remaining option is to destroy the narrative itself.
Which brings us to the smear campaign. I find the artistic imagery mixed with political destruction in this phrase so compelling.
It's very vivid.
It is. Think of a pristine, masterfully painted oil portrait of a leader. To smear is to take a handful of thick black mud or wet tar and aggressively wipe it directly across the canvas, permanently disfiguring the face.
Defacement is the core mechanism there. A smear campaign is an intentional, highly coordinated, and malicious effort to destroy an opponent's reputation using rumors, half-truths, or outright lies.
It's retaliation.
Exactly. If a mid-level employee exposes systemic fraud at a tech company, and then the next day there are all these anonymous leaks to the press claiming that employee has a history of mental instability and corporate theft, that is a smear campaign in action.
It's throwing the mud so thick and so fast that the public stops looking at the original scandal and they only stare at the defaced portrait of the accuser.
And psychologists actually refer to this as the illusory truth effect. If you smear enough mud, the audience subconsciously assumes there must be a reason the mud was thrown in the first place.
Where there's smoke, there's fire kind of thing.
Right. The goal isn't necessarily to prove the whistleblower wrong. The goal is to make the accuser appear so fundamentally dirty that they lose the moral authority to make the accusation at all. You destroy the messenger, so society refuses to look at the message.
But sometimes, the mud just doesn't stick.
Nope, not always.
The evidence against the powerful institution is too overwhelming, the financial documents are just too clear, and the smear campaign fails. And that brings us to one of the most epic historical idioms in the entire study, the writing on the wall.
It's a phenomenal shift in tone, isn't it? We go from dirty laundry and mud to literal ancient prophecy.
The origin story for this phrase is incredible. I mean, it comes directly from the biblical story of King Belshazzar of Babylon.
Right.
So picture this. The king is hosting this massive, arrogant feast. He is drinking from sacred vessels stolen from conquered temples, acting as if his empire is completely untouchable.
Total hubris.
Total hubris. And suddenly, in the middle of the party, a mysterious, disembodied hand appears and begins writing a cryptic message directly onto the palace plaster.
Terrifying.
Yeah, and the prophecy essentially stated that the king had been weighed in the balances, found wanting, and his empire was coming to an end. And that exact night Babylon fell, the king was killed.
It serves as the ultimate allegory for modern institutional arrogance meeting its fate. Today, when we say an executive or a politician sees the writing on the wall, it means they are recognizing clear, undeniable signs that a disastrous ending is imminent. And the critical factor is that this realization occurs before anything has been officially announced.
Like when a company's stock plummets 40% in 3 days, right?
Yeah.
The CEO's office blinds are suddenly pulled shut, and the corporate lawyers are pacing the hallways.
You know it's over.
The employees aren't waiting for a press release to tell them the company is bankrupt. They see the writing on the wall, and they immediately start updating their resumes.
Exactly the dynamic. It is the moment that cognitive dissonance shatters. For weeks or months, the institution may have been in complete denial, running smear campaigns and pretending the structure was sound.
Right, business as usual.
But the writing on the wall represents the precise second that denial is no longer psychologically sustainable. The fate of the institution is visible to anyone willing to read the signs.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Putting a smear campaign right next to the writing on the wall creates this massive clash of forces.
How do you mean?
Think about the contrast. A smear campaign represents humans desperately, frantically trying to rewrite the narrative. It's an illusion of control. But the writing on the wall, that represents absolute, immovable fate.
Ah, I see.
It's the exact moment a powerful person realizes their desperate smear campaign has completely failed. The truth is already etched into the plaster. You cannot smear mud over a prophecy of your own doom.
The frantic human effort crashing into immovable reality. It's a great point, but this brings up a complex structural question.
What kind?
When that immovable reality threatens a single CEO or a single politician, they might just resign. But what happens when the writing on the wall threatens an entire massive institution, an entire police department, a global bank, or a sprawling political syndicate?
Right.
Institutions do not simply surrender.
No, they don't issue a quick apology on social media and just fade away. When the castle is under siege, they pull up the drawbridge and initiate our final concept from the study, a code of silence.
This is the ultimate institutional defense mechanism, and it operates on a completely different psychological level than a single person keeping a secret in a closet.
The historical roots of this phrase are heavily tied to the Italian mafia concept of omerta.
Yes.
A code of silence is an unwritten, fiercely enforced rule among the members of a specific group. It dictates that you will never, under any circumstances, provide information to authorities, journalists, or outsiders.
Even if you know they're guilty.
Exactly, even if you have direct knowledge that a heinous crime was committed.
The sociology of this is deeply disturbing because of how effectively it overrides individual morality. A code of silence requires the members of a group to prioritize the survival of the institution over their own personal ethics.
And often over the law itself.
Exactly. It creates a very rigid in-group versus out-group dynamic.
You see this in major university hazing scandals all the time.
Oh, absolutely.
A student is critically injured, the police arrive and interview 50 different fraternity members who are all in the room, and suddenly every single one of them claims they were looking the other way, they heard nothing, and they know absolutely nothing.
It's chilling.
It's chilling to watch it operate in real time.
Because it is a highly coordinated mechanism of pluralistic ignorance, the individuals within the group might privately feel disgusted by what happened, but they believe that breaking the code would result in total social exile.
The fear keeps them in line.
The institution weaponizes the fear of isolation to ensure compliance. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the entire life cycle of a scandal comes full circle right here.
Oh, so?
The code of silence is nothing more than the institutional version of building a much bigger, much stronger closet to hide the new skeletons.
Wow. We are right back to the architecture of concealment, just reinforced with steel and guards. So what does this all mean? Let's just trace this cinematic progression for a second. Because the English language has practically written a Hollywood thriller for us.
It really has.
It starts with one person hiding a skeleton in the closet. The pressure of that secret forces them to operate under the table. Eventually, the spatial boundaries fail, someone starts dishing the dirt, and forces the entire group into airing their dirty laundry in public.
Then comes the retaliation.
Right. The accused panics, launching a vicious smear campaign to deface their enemies. But the truth is too heavy, the signs become undeniable, and they see the writing on the wall. Finally, to survive the fallout, the remaining power structure locks arms and enforces a code of silence.
It is a remarkable journey through our linguistic psychology. It reveals just how desperate we are to contain, visualize, and ultimately defend against the corrupting influence of power.
It's pretty heavy stuff.
It is. I would encourage you, listening to this right now, to apply this framework to the world around you. Think about the historical events or the massive corporate scandals you've lived through. Have you ever been in a toxic workplace and spotted the writing on the wall months before anyone else realized the company was failing? Have you watched a political debate and recognized the exact moment a smear campaign was deployed just to avoid answering a question?
Once you understand the mechanics behind these idioms, you really can never watch the evening news the same way again.
Never.
The language stops being just words and becomes a blueprint for behavior. But I want to leave you with one final thought today. To mull over on your own something that extends beyond the study's notes.
Okay.
We spent this entire deep dive marveling at how cinematic, dramatic, and visual these idioms are. Skeletons, dirt, mud, ancient prophecies. But do these highly dramatic phrases actually do us a disservice as a society?
In what sense? By making it feel like fiction.
Exactly. By turning real-world corruption, stolen pensions, ruined environments, illegal acts, into this catchy linguistic movie script, do we accidentally sanitize the actual harm? Do we end up treating real-life, devastating scandals like passive entertainment? It's almost as if the language itself acts as the ultimate stage prop. We sit back, eat our popcorn, and watch the smear campaign unfold, completely forgetting that we should be demanding actual justice for the victims hidden behind the script.
We become an audience to the drama, rather than citizens demanding accountability.
Exactly. It's definitely something to consider the next time a massive scandal breaks and the media starts using this exact vocabulary. Remember to look past the movie script and past the pristine, unbroken crime scene tape to see the actual reality underneath.
Well said.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the anatomy of a scandal. Keep questioning the language you hear, keep exploring the structures around you, and we will catch you on the next one.